So this kind of started when I was peacefully laying up watching the old David Tennant farewell tour specials. You know, The Next Doctor, Planet of the Dead, The Waters of Mars. But 2 out of the 5 specials I had never really quite been so keen on. So wanted to give them another go to see if my love for them had grown. To my surprise, it had. I loved them, both part 1 and part 2 of The End of Time. Before we go any further, I would ask you to subscribe if you love Doctor Who and Doctor Who content. This channel is all about Who and has some great stuff coming and already has some great stuff already on the channel. Something happened in The End of Time that very quickly grabbed my attention though. And no, it's not the fact that the ᴍᴏʀᴇ were not supposed to be fully green. Although you can kind of see the editing done to them now to make them all green. It's starting to age. New Doctor Who will be 20 years old next year. My, I'm getting old. Something that does seem to be a running theme within Rassilon's regenerations is the fact that they are almost always older. Granted, they are all older men, but with the introduction of female incarnations, this now flips this on its head. So what if, like the Master and that one random Time Lord in Heaven Sent that the Doctor shot?
Good luck. You too, sir. Regeneration in progress.
Oh, and the Doctor themselves, that have all had a female incarnation. What if it's now Rassilon's turn in the form of Mrs. Flood? We know that Rassilon will be wanting revenge on the Doctor for the events that unfolded on Gallifrey in the episode. The events, according to the Tardis wiki of Rassilon after they were banished from Gallifrey, happened as follows. After the Doctor saved Gallifrey and the Time Lords returned Gallifrey to end space from its pocket universe, Rassilon was overthrown and banished in a coup led by the 12th Doctor, who Rassilon had kept trapped inside the Doctor's confession dial for 4.5 billion years. Desiring revenge, Rassilon allied with a colony of Cybermen at the end of the universe, being converted into the Cyber President, and created an alternate timeline where the Cybermen conquered all of history. However, Rassilon and the 12th Doctor ultimately erased this timeline from existence after the Cybermen betrayed the former, once again leaving Rassilon alone at the end of the universe. It's funny because a lot of stuff seemed to have happened due to the episode Wild Blue Yonder. Salt seems to have caused a damn lot of damage to the universe.
You can't cross salt. Vampires, demons and ghosts cannot cross a line of salt until they've counted every single grain.
Oh, I keep thinking I wish I hadn't done that thing with the salt.
I invoked a superstition at the edge of the universe, where the walls are thin and all things are possible.
I mean, it is really bad for you, but my thoughts are, what if, during the Doctor's flight back home with Donna, Rassilon had managed to not hitch a ride much like Sutekh did for all of those, half of which makes not a grain of salt sense, years, but followed the Doctor's path from then on, leading them to see that eventually the Doctor would meet Ruby, so Rassilon had gone back in time to establish themselves in that street as Ruby's nosy neighbour, or regenerated into her and removed the real Mrs. Flood from existence. Hence why we see in the church on Ruby Road that Mrs. Flood's character changes completely, from not having a clue about the TARDIS and the Doctor to seemingly knowing it all. Don't forget, we do see at the end of the Empire of Death that Mrs. Flood appears to be moving out of Ruby Street to continue perhaps following the Doctor. We also know that she is in season 2 and is in an episode set in the past. How can this be? Mrs. Flood is clearly some kind of narrator for the show, directly speaking to the audience through season 1 and at the end of the season's final episode. I know RTD says that we might never get an answer to why she breaks the 4th wall. This I don't mind, as long as it has a good reason for happening. Rassilon would be a satisfactory explanation, as in The End of Time, it did not explain why Rassilon was narrating the episode's plot of what was happening and what was to come. This is truly what grabbed my attention. The narration in The End of Time, it had never been done before these episodes, and I don't think it had really been done like this since these 2 episodes. Yeah, you could say, but Rose did it in The Army of Ghosts / Doomsday. Well, no she didn't. That was just voiceover. Or Amy did it also. No, again, that was just voiceover. There are a few other subtle hints and nudges which could relate to Mrs. Flood being the narrator, or Rassilon. The 12th Doctor mentally swore by the rivers of Rassilon, but no one is sure if the rivers of Rassilon are real rivers or if they're just artifacts of Rassilon. But similar to how people think this could be River Song by using pond, river, flood, what if the rivers of Rassilon is how Rassilon chose the name Mrs. Flood? River, flood. A stretch, but you know, it could work. Timothy Dalton was credited in the End of Time Part 1 as the narrator, with the name Rassilon not being uttered until Part 2. And even at that, only once in his final scene.
Get out of the way.
The link is broken! Back into the Time War, Rassilon! Back into hell! Gallifrey 40!
This title is not actually mentioned in dialogue during the End of Time. It's also not mentioned in any subsequent narrative appearances by Dalton's incarnation of Rassilon. However, the character options action figure of Dalton's Rassilon was packaged and marketed under the name The Narrator. Bit of a weird choice of naming the figure this, considering their name is known to be Rassilon. But the Narrator could be their Time Lord title for all we know, much like the Master, the Rani, or the Doctor. We can also take Sutekh or the Master's characters' backstories. They had been changed from what they had been in Classic Who, for them returning in New Who, so that it makes sense to the plot. Rassilon was first brought back by RTD, and I say brought back because Rassilon is also from the classic era of Doctor Who, and something really tells me that he's not yet done with that character. I feel he deliberately introduced Rassilon the way he did, possibly for this very purpose, to reveal them as the narrator. RTD has also mentioned that he does not mind messing around with Doctor Who's history, telling stories that have been told before, changing the show's lore to fit the plot, or visiting places or times we know the Doctor has been before. RTD did know he was leaving Doctor Who as showrunner at this point, but that did not mean that he could not set up plans for future stories if he was to return as a guest writer or showrunner again, which actually happened. Similar to how Steven implanted River Song in Series 4, for her to then become an important part of his run as showrunner the season after. This is just a theory, but I'm not fully committed to it quite yet either. It is something that caught my attention, and I just wanted to share it with you all to see what you thought the possibilities of this could be. I will ask you again to subscribe if you love Doctor Who and Doctor Who content. This channel is all about Doctor Who and we love it here. And there's some great stuff coming, and as I said, there's great stuff already on the channel. Click this video if you want to stay in the YouTube Whoniverse, because honestly, it's always the best place to be.